morning, everyone. Welcome to our live stream. It's Monday today, but we usually do these on Sundays and Wednesdays, and it's currently 11 o'clock in the morning here. Let me know in the comments where you're joining from. And we have a guest joining us today. Her name is Mihaela. She's from over at Bloom and Dot. And actually, I'm going to send her the invite over right now. So make sure you have your bullet journal handy because we're going to be doing something in our bullet journals. We've got it open to a blank spread here. Hi, Mihaela.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm sorry that it didn't work out on TikTok right now. I don't know what the problem was.
It's all good. TikTok's a little bit tricky, so it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It's kind of a hit or miss.
Yeah,
Well, this spread, do you want to share what we're doing today?
Sure. Well, I had this idea that, well, spring, I don't know in other parts of the world, but I'm based in Berlin, in Germany right now, and spring is just kind of starting, like the trees are blooming, everything is getting green. And I really enjoy creating kind of like a bucket list or memories type spreads in my journals to like keep track of things that I want to do or that I've done. And so I had this idea that it would be nice for us to create like a spring or spring summer, depending on the season, bucket list spread. And yeah, you can use this in your bullet journal or just in your junk journal or your diary, whatever is your preferred medium, I guess, of journaling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I'm excited for bucket list, like spring bucket list in particular, because I'm graduating in a few weeks. So it's going to be like my end of university, list of things I want to do to decompress. What are some of the things that on yours? Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I just think I'm going to have quite a bit of like just very generic activities and things like spending a bit of time with my family because I will be going to visit them, flying to visit them in a few weeks' time. Yeah, things like that. I'm not a student anymore, so it's just like having a little bit of a holiday or just enjoying the nice weather. Simple things like that are usually the things that I put on my spread.
Awesome. I'm gonna post a comment here to ask everyone what would be on their bucket list as well. But before I do that, what else do you do online? So you have a wonderful Instagram page, and you just recently started a YouTube page as well. And what kind of things do you create and share about?
Exactly. So I have my Instagram page where I share mostly. It actually started by me sharing botanical illustrations. So it was just like illustrations of different plants and flowers. And then I slowly started branching out into bullet journaling because I like organization. So it kind of combined organization and art for me. So I share my spreads on Instagram and sometimes also on TikTok, but I'm there. And recently I started my YouTube, exactly where I just share tutorials or basically plan with me videos of how I do my spreads. And also I have, I think, one art vlog kind of taking like the viewers along on just like a random day and how I just spend my time and create some art, things like that.
I saw your most recent video, which I think was just 2 days ago you uploaded it. Is that why the theme for this spread is also kind of flowers and pastel colors? Do you usually keep the same theme throughout the month?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of very visual in that way, and kind of when I'm in the mood or kind of like have like a certain set of colors in my spreads, I like to keep it quite cohesive. And because this spread is kind of like part of this spring theme that's starting with April with the flowers, I wanted to have it like quite cohesive and have like pastels and greens and just very basic spring colors, I guess, but there's nothing wrong with having a basic nice spring palette in the end.
I love the colors. Well, we can flip over our camera, I guess, and get started. I think
Sure.
we'll do some sketching, plan out the spread. And once we do so, would you mind sharing also what people should have in terms of supplies if they're joining along too?
So basically, I think you shared it in Just a second. You shared it in basically this is something that you can do using any kind of medium that you want. You can do it with brush pens, you can do it with watercolors. I will be using watercolors today because yeah, I like it, but you can do it exactly the same with brush pens or whatever else you kind of prefer using.
Awesome. You do a lot of beautiful things with, I think it's gouache, although I've seen watercolor as well. Which one do you prefer? Like on your Instagram, what do you use the most?
Well, I actually haven't used gouache in about 10 years, and probably what you've seen is acrylics.
Oh,
Because when I used to, like last year around this time, I was just starting to experiment with color. So I just started using acrylics because they're very opaque, and I like that.
mhm.
And currently I'm using mostly or primarily watercolors with a bit of fine liners as well and brush pens. And I don't know, they're very different mediums. I would like to try gouache as well, actually, but I don't have any paints and I don't need more paints at the moment, so I'm just holding on to buying more stuff. Um, yeah, I really like watercolor because it has a very free and kind of airy look, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it can be very delicate, but I mean, you can do a lot of things with it, like simple or more complex, which is why I like it.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I thought, I guess I associate anything that looks very opaque with gouache now. I've seen a lot of people use it that way. But your designs and the scenes that you paint are so gorgeous. Definitely
Thank
check
you.
out Mihaela's. It's Bloom and Dot if you haven't yet. So, what do we do to get started for this spread?
Exactly. So basically, this is how I make them. It's kind of like a basic list spread, more or less, with some decorations around. So I like to use a separate piece of paper for the actual bucket list where you will be writing the things you want to do. Look, you can either leave an empty space on your page where you want to have the list, kind of, or you can also glue like a piece of separate paper in. But I think I have like these pieces of craft paper or just like normal lined paper. You can also use grid paper. It also looks really nicely. And
Mm-hmm.
basically what I do first, I don't glue them in just yet. I just take the pieces and kind of see where I want to have them on the spread. So I think I kind of like the idea of having two pieces that kind of go over the two pages, something like this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Is
you can do whatever.
What's the color scheme that you're using again?
For this, exactly, I'm using, I can maybe show my palette or, no, maybe it's easier with the brush pens. Just kind of like a very simple spring tones. I have like a green, like a coral shade, I guess, and a purple. These are brush pens. I will be using watercolor, but again, you can do the same color palette with pens or pencils or whatever you're using. So here are a few different options. Exactly. So it's kind of like a spring palette, but you can use also a bit of craft paper if you want. That also kind of goes with those colors as well. Yeah. So, but actually, like you can use whatever colors you like or you enjoy using. It's not that it works only with this kind of color palette.
Oh, yes. I find it's very helpful to choose your color palette beforehand. So I would definitely choose one. I decided I'm going to go with something similar to yours because I actually also have a kind of pastel theme for April. This was the spread that we made with Claudia from at Cloptimism.
Ah, yeah.
It'll
I
actually
watched
fit.
the watched parts of that live. It was really nice, and
Oh,
it looks really cute. The cover with the book.
yes. Thank you so much. So I think I'll go with kind of like a green toned paper so that it matches. I just have to still cut it out though, but feel free to like start sketching, I think, if that's the next step or.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was going to say. Like you can kind of position the pieces of paper where you want to have them. And then just to make sure that when you're painting or drawing your things, you don't go over the space that the things are going to be at. I just kind of mark where the paper is going to be so that I know where not to paint, if that makes sense.
I'm thinking to maybe make it a little bit bigger than this. So.
And
And
then
sorry, I forgot to mention, if anyone has questions for Mihaela, leave them in the question box. I've already seen quite a few, so I'll ask those as we get started. And sorry, go ahead.
yeah, definitely. I'll be very interested to see like what people want to know.
Well, we can start with one of them. I think this is a good one to get started. Someone asked, what inspired you to start sharing your bullet journal online, I think?
Well,
when you first got
actually,
started.
I think I mentioned it already, but I started actually not with my bullet journal, but with my video frozen or
Oh no, I can see things.
okay. Because I just opened the live on my laptop as well so that I can see what you're doing because my phone is like over my head so I can't see. And the frame is kind of okay, it's just with a bit of a delay. Yeah, so basically how I started was I started sharing botanical illustrations first, and I started sharing them because I had just finished university and I didn't really have a hobby. And it was the middle of the pandemic, so I really wanted to kind of have something to do or like a creative hobby again now that I wasn't at uni anymore and I had a bit more time. So I kind of followed a few artists on Instagram and I saw the illustrations that they were doing, and that really inspired me to kind of start doing it myself and posting it, not because I was necessarily wanting to share it with a ton of people, but to kind of hold myself accountable, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
I tend to, if I'm not instantly good at something, I drop it. And that's really bad. So I wanted to kind of have this place where I wanted, or like it held me accountable to post, even if something wasn't perfect, just to continue with the habit of doing it. And that really got me into drawing again and creating more. And then a few months later, I discovered a lot of bullet journaling accounts, and I thought, okay, this is like the perfect thing for me, because art, or it can be art, but it's also organization, which is like two of my favorite things. So it was kind of natural because I was already sharing my illustrations anyway, so I just started sharing my spreads, and now I'm kind of morphed into more of a, I guess, a bullet journal account than an illustration account. But I mean, it happens.
Do you find that you've improved a lot over the past year or a couple years? Is it like,
Yes.
are you able to actually see, look back?
Yes, definitely. Sometimes it's difficult to see it, or like you don't realize that you've improved. But when I compare some older illustrations that I've done, I've definitely have. And also, even if it doesn't maybe look like I've improved, I've definitely improved in my, how do you say it in English? My outlook on things. I've gained more confidence and I'm not as scared anymore to just try things out, even if I don't know, if I've never painted it before or if I haven't done something before. I kind of have more confidence art-wise, I guess, to just do things. And that definitely comes with just practice and experience, and you learn to trust yourself, and you know that even if one thing that you sketch or one spread that you do, even if it doesn't turn out perfect, it's okay, because you can always flip the page and like do the next thing.
Yes. And what did you study at university?
Sorry, I did. I think the.
Oh, no worries. What did you study at university?
Yes, I studied architecture. I did my bachelor's and master's, and that was also, it's kind of a creative course as well. Like it's kind of a mix between technical and creative. And I think this is also kind of what really inspired, I guess, my style in the beginning, because I wasn't using color at all in my illustrations. They were only black and white. And that's very common for architectural drawings or the architectural style of things, I guess. So that was definitely something that played kind of a role also in my style now as well.
That's very cool. And are you currently working in architecture? Like what kind of stuff do you do outside of the online space?
Kind of, yes. So basically, I was working as an architect, but now currently I am working still in the architecture field, but not so much in the direct planning stuff. So I'm not directly planning buildings, I guess you could say. I'm working more in the communications. So a lot of PR and communication that goes along with architecture and construction and design. And I'm working for an agency that deals with that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a mix of a bit of PR and architecture and design work.
Wow.
But basically it's not so creative what I do at the moment. So having my journal and my illustrations on the side is kind of what gives me the balance, I guess.
I've heard a lot of people say the same thing, that they use bullet journaling kind of as an outlet to be creative, even if they don't really get that in their day-to-day life so much.
Yeah, it's a great way, and I think that's also because I wasn't really creative for myself while I was still at university, because it was a creative course. So I kind of, I guess, my creativity went there, and I didn't really have the desire to do anything else on the side because it was so time consuming and energy consuming. So that's why I think I got into drawing and bullet journaling again after university, because then I didn't have that much of a creative outlet in my everyday life anyway.
And I'm just wondering, what are you currently sketching? So I can see it from the draft that you sent me, but do you want to go over maybe how you draw the flowers? You have a very unique style there.
Sure. I don't know if maybe I can zoom in somehow. Maybe that will be better. So I'm just basically sketching some very, very basic flowers. These just have like 4 petals, and they're not a particular flower. It's not like it has to look like one type of flower. Just like a very simple flower with 4 petals and a little circle in the middle. And these are going to be like the feature pieces of the page. And around it, I'm just sketching some filler elements, like some very simple leaves that are basically just like I don't know how you would describe it, like an elongated shape. It also doesn't have to look like a particular leaf. Just something to kind of fill out the space around the area where our list is going to be. So basically, if the list is here in the center, you're going to have to fill the space around it somehow. I mean, and this also depends on like the style that you enjoy. If you enjoy more kind of maximalist style, I guess you can fill out every single little blank space, or keep it very minimal, just maybe in one corner or something like that, depending on what you like. Exactly. And because I think it's always nice to have like at least 2 or like 3 elements when you're creating a composition like this, because if you have too much of the same thing, it might look a little bit repetitive. I'm also sketching just very loosely spread around, also just super, super decorative tiny flowers, like the flowers basically that you draw when you're like 5 or something, like really, really simple. I'm not sure if you can see it properly on the video, but you will when we start to color it in. Just basically that shape that most people think of when they think of a flower drawing. So that's what I'm doing.
I think that's a really great tip to draw, to have a few different elements, so it's not just one or two, but you have a few things that go well together. It's kind of like making a color scheme with a few colors that go well together.
Yeah, exactly.
You also have some of those flowers that are, rather than facing forward, like outward towards the camera like this, they're a little bit on an angle. I was just wondering if you had any tips for that, like the leaf that's closest to the viewer is a little bit
Bent.
kind of, yeah, bent.
Yeah, well, this is kind of, yeah, it's difficult to explain it if you don't have a flower in front of you, actually. It really helps if you look at the flower and you look at it at a bit of an angle. And obviously then not all the petals are the same size and are perfectly symmetrical, because the flower is not facing you directly with the middle towards you. But what happens is that when you look at it at an angle, it's like closest to you, kind of is a little bit bigger, but you also don't see that much of it. So you kind of see just kind of the part that is, oh, my camera is is escaping. You kind of just see the part that is facing to you, and the part that kind of goes into the middle, it's usually kind of hidden by the petal itself. So you more or less have like this kind of oval shape and nothing else from that petal. So you don't actually see how it goes into the middle. But I mean, I think it's kind of difficult to explain just like that, but if you really take the time and like take a flower, like quite a simple one maybe, and just look at it, and you're going to see how the petals that face towards you kind of just have a different shape. And if you really look at it and try to emulate what you're seeing and try to sketch it, this is kind of what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. Do you reference a lot of real life photos? In your, like when you're sketching, do you often use a lot of reference photos?
Yes, yes and no. Like for this one, for example, I didn't use a reference. I just kind of made the flower up, I guess. But if I want to portray a very specific flower that has a very specific appearance, I guess, then yes, definitely, because I think if someone has been drawing flowers or botanical things for like 10 years or like 5 years or whatever, you kind of have the images in your head a little bit, and maybe you don't need to reference them. But I haven't done it for so long, and there are so many different flowers that I can't remember the specifics of them all. So oftentimes when I want to draw something very specific, then I try to look at some royalty-free websites like Unsplash or Pexels, I think is the other one, where you have a lot of different flower images, and then look at it and to kind of try to interpret it, like not copy it directly, but do my own interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm nearly done. What would be the next step after the sketching?
The next step would be to, let me just fix my tripod a little bit. The next step would be to start with watercolor or with your brush pens, whatever it is that you're using. And here, the one thing that you should be careful of, I guess, or people should have in mind or keep in mind, is if you're planning to use the watercolor directly in your notebook, then you need a notebook that has pretty thick pages. The one that I'm using now has 150 GSM, I think, but anything from like 150, 160, there are some notebooks, I think, that are even with watercolor paper, but can also be used for bullet journaling, obviously. Because if the paper is too thin, first of all, it's going to wrinkle a lot. I mean, almost every paper wrinkles when you use a lot of water with watercolor, but if the paper is like very, very thin, it's going to wrinkle, and then it might also happen that the color bleeds through to the other side. So if you're using watercolor, just keep in mind to make it, to use it in a notebook that's thick enough, basically, the pages.
That's it. Mine is quite thin, definitely not 150 GSM. I'm not sure what it is. It's moleskin or like term, so
I mean, I think you can still use watercolor even then, but just have to be careful about how much water you use. And because I'm very bad at water control, I use a lot of water. So I always have to do it either in like on a separate piece of paper. This is also good. You can also do it on a separate piece of paper and glue it in afterwards. But in this case, I'm too lazy, and I think it's because I know that my notebook can handle it. I'm going to do it directly in. So I'm just kind of doing a very light lilac shade. And I'm just kind of starting to go over the petals.
Are you going to outline them after, or do you like to keep it just with the watercolor?
It depends. Sometimes I outline them, sometimes I don't. But if I'm doing something that looks kind of more loose like this, I outline them at the end, because then I'm someone who likes to keep to the lines if there are lines. So if I outline kind of first, sometimes this kind of free feeling that you have with like watercolor can get lost if you just color it in.
That makes sense. Also, I'm reading some of the things that people are saying would be on their spring bucket list, and someone said to definitely starting a garden.
Oh, that's nice.
Great
I
idea.
would love to.
And baking a beautiful floral cake is another one.
Ooh,
these are
that's also nice.
One of mine is definitely cooking and baking more, because I'll have a bit more time.
Yeah, that's also like something, you know, cooking and baking, it can be so relaxing, but if you don't have the time to do it, like it's also super stressful sometimes. So it's nice when you have some time off to kind of do it in peace and not worry.
Exactly, yeah.
So basically, maybe I should explain a bit of what I'm doing, but I think you can kind of see it more or less. I'm just using this light purple shade, and I'm just kind of going over the sketch and like doing the petals very loosely, and I'm just deliberately leaving some areas kind of white, because I like this look. It makes it look more, I guess, less planned and more artsy. I don't know.
Could you move your notebook up a little bit too? I think the comments are covering it a little. Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
Hey, we're almost the same shade of purple. Quite similar.
Yes. And also what I like to do, like this is not meant to be a realistic kind of illustration. So it's just, just laying the color. And what I like to do to create a little bit of dimension is here at the point where the petal kind of go into the center and where they would meet, I just kind of put a little bit more color, and makes it a little bit darker to kind of create this dimension.
I wonder, do you ever mix if you do use a brush pen, would you ever mix it with watercolor as well?
What I've done before is to add like a super light wash of watercolor, and then kind of, sorry, my tripod is really not wanting to work properly today. What I've done is to add some details later on if I feel like the watercolor is a bit maybe too light. I've added like some strokes with the brush pen, or or some shadows with the brush pen because it's a pen and it's a bit easier to control than a brush, even though it's called a brush pen. But I haven't actually, I know you can use it, for example, the Tombos, or I think Sakura has also some water-based brush pens that you can use as watercolor, basically. But I haven't done it like that. I paint something with the brush pens and then go over with water, or I'm not really sure how you would do it.
Yeah, it might smudge.
Sorry?
It might smudge the brush pen a little bit, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I love the effect that you're making right now with slightly darker sections on the petals.
Yeah, and because also, again, this is not watercolor paper, the paper is still wrinkling a little bit, and sometimes the color kind of collects in one area, but that's not a problem. I think that kind of gives it this kind of watercolor character. The illustration gets this character from the watercolor, and again, because it's not meant to be realistic, it doesn't bother me. I mean, some people maybe don't like that, but yeah, then I would suggest again to use a piece of watercolor paper and paint it on that and then glue it in afterwards.
And I'm very curious, do you do any travel sketching, or like where else do you usually paint besides your bullet journal spreads and when you paint it on a watercolor paper and put it in your bullet journal?
I don't actually. I've done it when I was still at uni, because obviously when you study architecture, you you sketch a lot of buildings as well and observe things. And we had like a few excursions, how do you call it? Like uni trips, I guess, excursions to different cities and looking at different architectural buildings. And there we would sketch it to try to understand the building better and the concept behind it and things like that. So I've done it in the past, but recently, especially with what's like with the pandemic, first of all, I haven't really been traveling. And I don't really, I don't know. I haven't recently, I really haven't, but I want to start doing it more, because like quick sketches like this really help you to train your eye and your hand, I guess.
Yes.
And it's like a really, really good practice in general. Like sometimes I find that, I mean, first of all, it's always when you're drawing, no matter what you're drawing, it's always better to draw from, I guess, from person, like seeing the object live than from a photo. Because the photo is already kind of, it's making it easier for you because the photo is like already a 2D image. So your brain doesn't have to do the additional thinking, I guess, to transform what you're seeing into something that's not three-dimensional. And when you're looking at the things live, you have to do the additional thinking to think, okay, how I'm seeing this, but how is it actually going to look on a page, or how should it look on a page? And I think that makes you look at your surroundings a lot more closely and just notice things more, I guess. So I definitely want to start doing it, but I don't know
It's so
when
cool
that will happen.
excursions and things like that. Did you travel when you did do those like field trips for architecture? Did you travel outside of Germany as well?
Yes, we had, it was actually, in our course, it was all outside of Germany, but I guess it kind of depends on like where the professor organizes it, because the students don't really have a say in where they're going. But we went one year, we went for a week to the Netherlands, to different cities. And one year we went to Denmark, to Copenhagen. So that was really nice to kind
What
of.
was your architecture that you saw? I guess either like both the location, what was your favorite location in terms of architecture, and what was your favorite architecture style that you saw?
Well, that's really this is like it's difficult because I quite like a very modern kind of architectural style, but also I really enjoy historical architecture, but you can't really compare them because they're completely different things. Oh, nice. I have a spider going across my table. Just try. If it goes on my washi tape, then I guess I'm not going to use it for the spread. But yeah, but you can't really compare modern architecture with like historical buildings, like old churches or monasteries or things like that, because they're completely different in style and in purpose, obviously, as well. But I really enjoyed both. Like there was one church in Copenhagen, I think, and it's not super historical. I think it was from the 1920s, but it was made completely out of brick, and it was huge.
Wow.
I think it was called the Grundtvig Kirke. I'm not quite sure. Probably the people from Denmark are shouting at me in the comments if there's someone from Denmark. But I was really, really impressed by it because it was made completely out of little bricks, and even the how do you call it, the arches and everything, and it was really, really beautiful.
Is that like a really difficult material to build a big structure out of? Usually,
well, it's not. It's unusual nowadays because you have concrete, obviously, which is a lot easier and quick with, and brick often requires more craftsmanship, I guess, because you have quite specific brick sizes. So if you're planning like windows or doors or openings, arches, whatever, you have to you're a little bit, I guess, constrained by the dimensions of the bricks. And that's why normally modern architecture is made with concrete most of the time, because you can just do anything with it. And just to quickly say what I'm doing now, I'm just painting some very loose leaves as well with a light green shade. You can use multiple green shades to add more variety, but I'm just using one right now.
I'm gonna ask one more of these questions, and don't forget, if you have a question, just so that we don't miss it in the comments, leave it in the question box. Someone asked, and this is a good one, I'm curious as well, how do you come up with the ideas for your spreads? You have some very creative ones. I saw, we shared on our stories also, like a playlist spread, things like that. They're very, very creative and not, your typical bullet journal spreads. So how do you come up with those ideas?
Well, a lot of the times, especially when it comes to bullet journaling, for the topic of the spread, I usually get inspired by other things that I've seen on Instagram in the community, because there are so many people that are all super creative and come up with like really interesting ideas. So, for example, having a playlist spread isn't like my original idea. I saw it or I think it's quite a popular type of spread actually. And when I see something that I like and I think that can be useful to me or in my spreads, then I try it out. And if I like it, then I kind of include it more regularly in my setups. But when it comes to the actual, maybe the person means like the
theme.
The theme, I guess, maybe. It's super different actually. Like sometimes I'm somewhere and I see something and then I get an idea. Like for November last year, I did like I think botanical gardens, greenhouse kind of theme. And it was because I like to go to the botanical gardens here in Berlin, and they have these beautiful glass houses. Also, again, like an architectural element. So I was there and I took a lot of pictures, and then I was thinking, okay, I want to do something with this. So it turned into a theme for my bullet journal. Other times, I've seen just like a random picture or something like that on Instagram again. And I mean, basically anywhere, like you can get the inspiration anywhere. You just have to be open-minded and look for it maybe also a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer. Just be curious.
There are so many great things on Instagram. I always get inspired by what I see. It's like that's one of the nice things about people sharing what they do, because it'll inspire more creations.
Exactly. Yeah. This is also what it's really interesting. Like for me, I never thought when I started sharing things, it wasn't really having any thoughts at that point that people will like my stuff or like will be inspired by it or something. And it's really interesting when people message me and say, oh, you know, this theme that you did or like this illustration that you did like really inspired me and I want to do something similar. Or, you know, it's such a it's a really nice, but it's also a really strange feeling because like you just do things and you also get inspired by others, but you also just like do kind of your own thing, I guess. And then it's weird when someone else comes in and says, "Oh, I like that thing, you know. You inspired me to do something, you know." And it's a good feeling also because again, like I also get inspired by others. So
yes. Another person asked, "How do this?" This is also a great one. How do you stay motivated to make such creative and artistic spreads when you have a full-time job?
well, the thing is like I'm not always motivated. That's like usually I've also had like months in the past where I basically didn't do a theme at all in my journal. Like I just had like a series of lists, I guess, just daily to-do lists and stuff, and not a very elaborate theme, I guess, just because I didn't feel like it or didn't have the time, and that's totally fine as well. Like this is the point of bullet journaling is to be enjoyable and to help you organize yourself. And if you feel like you can't motivate yourself to do spreads that are super artsy at certain points or like 1 month, then just don't. Like you don't have to. It's also nice to sometimes to have a little bit of a break from doing like super artsy or elaborate spreads, because creativity also needs time to recharge. I guess that's how I like to see it. And if you're pushing yourself constantly to do more and more and you're not feeling like it, you also won't like the result and you won't enjoy using your journal. So, but generally, what motivates me is because when I have like pretty spreads, I guess, I'm more motivated to use my journal and to organize myself more. So, and also kind of as like practice, you know, like to get better at painting or drawing. So yes, for me, those are the things that keep me motivated.
Yeah, I see
have to.
this too. And also experimenting with different styles. I feel like that's something I'm always trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's also the thing with like bullet journaling, that you it's a really nice way to kind of experiment with different styles, because if you don't enjoy something, then you don't have to do it next month, and then you know that you don't enjoy it. So yeah, I think oh great. I think the spider made it to my spread, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of sorry everyone.
Very brave.
Yeah, well, if I wasn't on the live, I would probably be screaming and calling for my boyfriend to deal with it, but I don't think the people need to see it.
That's what I was just thinking. That's what I would be doing for sure.
So yeah, so basically, I think I talk a little bit a bit much, but basically now that the flowers and the leaves are more or less done, I'm letting mine dry a little bit, and I'm just going to very quickly add like these last little details of the mini flowers, and all I'm doing with a brush and just a different color is just adding like these kind of lines that look like a cartoon flower, basically. I hope you can see it. Just anywhere that I feel like the spread is maybe a little bit empty and needs a little bit of detail.
Mm-hmm. And are you going to add a title to the spread anywhere?
Yes, I am. I'm again, like maybe you can see it, but I've left a little bit of a kind of rectangle here in this case. So
Yes.
I was thinking to kind of add the title there, but of course you can place it somewhere else. You can place it along the bottom as well, or like when you add the little pieces afterwards for your bucket list, you can also stamp it or letter it on top of them as well. So it's just up to you and how you like to work, I guess.
Okay. I'll probably do it right here, just kind of down the middle. So I'll leave some space. Someone else asked, I mean, I think you already went over this, but suggestion on bullet journal paper type for painting with watercolor. So you said something around 150 GSM or more is best for that, if you want to paint directly into your journal.
Yes. Again, it also depends on what kind of medium you're using. I think but again, I don't have experience with gouache and bullet journaling personally, but I think gouache kind of works also on a slightly thinner paper because you're not using as much water as you are with watercolor. And I think for acrylics, it can also be maybe okay if you have like a slightly thinner paper because acrylic paint is not water-based. So it sits on top of the paper and the paper doesn't soak it up. Which again can also work with thinner paper, but generally I think 150, 160 GSM and more is the best option because then you have like more freedom to use more materials.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I was curious about, and if you wanted to explain something else about the spread, let me know. Should I ask another question now, or did you want to share a next step?
You can maybe I can just quickly say what I'm going to do now is add a little bit of brown to the middle of the flowers to kind of make the center, even though they're not completely dry, but that's fine because I actually quite like the effect that watercolor gives when one color kind of mixes into another. So I'm just going to add some very loose dots kind of to the middle.
So a brown shade.
You can also use black or I think like a slightly darker shade is nice to create more contrast and to make it pop, make the center pop.
Okay. Cool.
So you can also use a fine liner, like a black fine liner. And also on the smaller flowers, I'm just adding like one little dot to the middle.
Was there anything that inspired the color scheme here, or it's just kind of colors that a color palette that you like? Because it's kind of pastel.
Yeah, it was kind of more or less, these are the colors that I'm using for my April spreads. And I don't know, I've been obsessed with these kind of pastel colors recently. I mean, this spread kind of turned a little bit more dark than the rest of my April spreads, but I really like this kind of lilac purple, the kind of coral, coral shade also. They're just like very bright, happy
Yes.
colors to me. And somehow I was really craving some pastel um, pastel colors. I don't know. I just had like this image in my head for like a few days of these colors, and then I kept seeing images everywhere with these colors because they're quite trendy. Like pastels are quite trendy at the moment. So I thought, okay, I have to do something with this color scheme. So.
These are the colors that I associate most with spring, and I think for the past 3 years or so, I've been using these 3 markers specifically for any kind of like spring themed spreads. So I think all of my April spreads have been with these kind of colors.
And they're super pretty.
Yes.
What is this Stationery Island? Yes, or
Stationery Island brush pen.
I was wondering because I didn't recognize the brand at first or like the look of the pens, but they look really nice. I haven't tried them yet.
Yeah, they're very nice to work with. Like the tip is very malleable. It's like it feels kind of like a paintbrush, but I guess that's kind of the point of a brush pen. So I'll add my brown dot. It's good because I use the brush pen for the flowers, so there's no watercolor that needs to dry or anything. And if you're watching and you haven't shared yet, let us know what's on your spring bucket list. It's really fun to get inspired by what other people are doing. Mine was quite simple. I've thought about it, and I definitely want to relax after graduating. So I have basically the whole summer off before I start working, which is really nice.
That's really nice.
And
you really need it.
Yes, I really do feel like I need it.
That's the thing. I think like I mean, I guess maybe also depends on the person, but I also felt like this that it feels like you have to like rush straight into like a full-time job and working when you graduate, but it's actually really nice to take a few months off and just to kind of really kind of complete one chapter and relax and get ready for the next, because I mean, when you start working full-time, you rarely get the chance to take such a long break.
Yes, exactly. That's how I'm thinking.
In the end, it's like you're still young and you have a lot of time ahead of you. So like taking 2 months off or like a summer off before starting to work, it's perfectly fine. And it's not like you're wasting time or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, hopefully. That's my number 1, and some writing. Are you all done with yours?
More or less, yeah. Some of the flowers still have to dry a little bit, but I can already start putting in. I'm still not sure if I should use craft paper or just normal white paper.
You can try holding them both up, and maybe we can see what everyone thinks about that. Which one looks
what do you guys think? Either 2 pieces of craft paper like this, or I mean the other one is just a very generic, simple lined white paper because I don't have any more grid paper actually in the practice piece that I did. Maybe I can show it quickly. Hope none of the watercolors run. This is what I did. I don't know if you can see it. I used some grid paper from Muji. Muji has like the best, nicest paper in stationery. I love it. But I don't have any more of that grid paper. So I either have to use the craft paper or just normal lined paper.
It's kind of a totally different vibe for each.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm actually going to go with the lined paper just because I don't want, I think I like to keep it quite, yeah, I guess like light and soft looking, and I think the craft paper kind of makes it a bit
It's a little
heavier for.
Yeah. What do you think, Mihaela? I'm trying to think. I'm going between these two, I think. Well, I'd have to cut this one down, but this is dotted. They're both quite
I mean, I quite like the one that you have underneath, like that's slightly, I think it's slightly colored.
Yeah, slightly green.
Yeah, I think that's quite nice. That's what I was thinking also actually, that it could be really nice to have like a paper that kind of matches some of the colors that you're already using, but it's not like the same intensity, so it doesn't like get too busy or take away from the illustrations. Like I have like a piece of handmade light purple paper, but I need it for something else actually, so I can't use it for this spread, but it's just this decoration here on the side.
The purple looks really nice though too. What are you using it for? Is it another?
I wanted to no, I want to make a card for a friend because it's her birthday soon and I want to send her a card.
That's very sweet. Are you gonna mail it?
Yeah. I'm one of those people, started like last year with like all of the bullet journaling community. I discovered also pen paling, like sending letters. And I started pen paling to a few people, but even before that, I always really enjoyed kind of sending postcards to my family and friends, like on the like old-fashioned way, I guess, via post. And maybe that's because I live far away from my family. I live in a different country, and a lot of my friends are spread throughout either Germany or Bulgaria or like different countries around the world. So we don't get to see each other in person very often, and just getting a card in the mail, like something physical, it's quite nice. Like you just have the feeling that the person really made the effort and thought of you and picked something out and mailed it, and it's just like it feels a little bit more special than just sending a text message.
Yeah, that's such a great idea, especially if you have family abroad. And it's a little more of a keepsake too. Do you ever send any gifts through, or mostly cards?
Mostly cards, because otherwise it can get pretty expensive. But anything that's like kind of smaller, for example, for my pen pals, I sometimes send them like little stationery, I guess, gifts like washi tape samples or stickers, or maybe like a little illustration that I've painted, or like some tea bags, like little things like that that are still quite flat and can fit in an envelope nicely. But they're just like a little bit of an extra thing, not just one card.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so basically, I think now I'm going to kind of tape these in. And what I like about having like separate pieces of paper, of course, you can glue them in like properly so that they don't move. But what I usually like to do is to kind of take some washi tape and stick them down with the washi tape. So then I can, if the list gets filled in or I want to exchange something or add something else, then I can always take the piece of paper, because the washi tape isn't that strong and it doesn't damage the spread if you take it off. So
yes,
I'm just going to use a bit of grit washi tape, maybe. That always looks nice.
Do you draw around the edges of the paper, like to shadow, or are you just kind of going with the shadow that it'll create?
Sorry, I think that maybe my internet is making some problems, because you were a bit, you were saying what if I just water around the edges of the...
around the edges of the paper that you're sticking in, do you add shadow? Like, are you going to outline anything there or no?
Well, I think I maybe add a little bit of a drop shadow, but I think I'm going to do that at the end when everything is like in its place and won't move around anymore. So I also quite like to layer washi tape. So I'm using a basic like neutral grid washi tape, and then adding a little bit of a more colorful one on top, just for some color, I guess.
There was actually a question about washi tape here. It was, what type of washi tapes are your favorite?
In terms
grid
of
washi tape
design, or probably. Well, I really like kind of quite neutral and simple patterns because they're great for layering. Like you have a few of those in your shop. For example, here's one, just a simple grid washi tape.
Yes.
If I'm going to use washi, it's probably going to be something like this in different colors. You also have this set that I also really like, that has different grid washi tapes in different colors and different patterns, like a smaller one or a more, I guess, wider one. And I like to layer it with something that has a bit more of a pattern. Like here I'm just using one with like flowers on top and just putting it on top. But yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question, but
yeah, I mean, it's so I guess you really like the grid and some of the plainer ones.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's not like too busy, because normally when I'm using washi in combination with illustrations, it can get quite busy if both the washi tape and the illustration are on the same page. So I like to use kind of more like either neutral grid patterns or like simpler solid colors, I guess, to kind of complement the spread but not to distract from it.
That's a good tip as well. I like to play with the contrast. So like choosing, if my spread is really busy, I'll choose washi tape that's a little more simple, and vice versa.
Yeah. I like the colors that you chose. Those goes really well with the spread.
Thank you. I went with a bit of a brown because of the dot in the center. I think brown also goes well because it is kind of spring colors. So
yeah, I mean neutrals in general. That goes with anything, almost any color, like beige kind of type washi tapes or like brown patterned ones. Those are great staples to have because you can put them basically on anything and it still looks good.
Yes.
And what I also really like, it's one of my favorite washi tapes. Actually, it's also from your shop. I think it was a collaboration, but I'm not sure who the artist was. Maybe Sarika Studio, I'm not sure.
Oh, yes, that was Sarika Studio.
Yes, and it's this kind of tape that has like these kind of clips and yeah, clips, I guess. And what I like to do is to just kind of cut them out and use them as stickers. And for these types of spreads, they're actually really fun because it looks like you have a little sticker on and it's actually just cut out washi. So I think I'm going to use one or two of those to make it look like I have like a little clip on my spread.
Such a cool
That's
idea.
holding the paper, I guess, in place, even though it's not really, but.
I have this set, which is the planner washi tape set. So I'm gonna try and do the same effect with some of these stickers.
And obviously, just like in general, if if you don't like a certain type of washi tape or a certain type of sticker, what you can do is, like, if you can draw it, of course you can sketch it, and that's also fine. But what I've also done in the past is to kind of print something out just on normal printer paper and then cut it out and stick it in. So
yes, that's a really good way to create your own stickers.
or you can also, I mean, I guess that's a bit more time consuming, but you can also get like sticker paper that's blank, like just A4 sheets of sticker, and then print directly on top of the sticker paper, and then it's really a proper sticker.
Where do you usually get your supplies? Do you kind of have all of these things in Germany, or do you buy them online a lot?
Well, most of the things like my brushes and my watercolors and brush pens and stuff like that, I get them here from local stores because I live in Berlin, and basically it's because it's the capital of Germany. I have everything here. And if I don't have something specific that I really want, then I order it online, like on Amazon or different sites. I also like to, when it comes to stickers, I don't use too many stickers actually. And when I get some, I like to get some from like small businesses to support them. Like on Etsy or yeah, wherever. Some people have like also their own shop website, I guess.
Yes. Have you considered making one before?
Stickers?
Yes, or making a shop or anything like that.
Well, yes, I have. It's like, I don't know, it's quite a time-consuming thing. Not so much to like design, I guess, the stickers, but like this whole organizational thing around them of like figuring out how to sell them, like how to make them, how to market everything. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea and an interesting project and something that I would like to do at some point, I think. But yeah, at the moment, I have enough things going on.
Yeah, I mean, you must be pretty busy with your job as well, and keeping up with, sharing things online too. So
Yeah, I mean, like some weeks, that's like the good thing with bullet journaling. Like if I'm organized enough and I manage to create all of my spreads at the start of the month, then I don't have to do too much. And I just kind of like post things as the month progresses. So I have a bit of free time to do other things and projects. Like recently, I did a few commissions, but generally I don't have too much time actually for extra projects. That's true.
Maybe let's do like a few more things, and then I was thinking we could flip the camera around and take some more questions. There are a few more in the
of course. So what I'm doing now is to just very loosely outlining the petals, the big petals that we did with the watercolor, to just add a little bit more of a definition. And more or less, I mean, you can keep adding on and keep adding details, but I think for the purpose of this live, I think we're pretty much done. The only thing that's kind of is the title and the actual things on the bucket list, but I think everyone can kind of add theirs whenever they want. When they
result as well on our stories when
yeah, exactly.
So we can fill that in too. This turned out so nice, though. I really like the idea and the fact that you are sticking in the lists.
Yeah, exactly. I just kind of really like this kind of flexible system because with the washi tape you can just kind of take it out and put a different paper in or exchange it however you feel like, or exchange tapes even if at some point you don't like them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the header, for title, I'm just going to stamp it in because I also quite like how that looks.
With individual
But you can
letters.
also, exactly, I have a stamp set that has like individual serif font letters in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really good at classical lettering, like this kind of very typical hand lettering with brush pens that you see a lot on Instagram. I'm not good at it, so I don't really do it. So I like to stamp things in and then just add like with my own cursive handwriting, like a subtitle or.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with serif as well then. But I'm just drawing it with some little, I forget what these are called, but like the little ends on letters. Spring. And you added the Spring Bucket List 2022.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, because again, I like to mix this kind of stamps with my own handwriting. So I'm just going to stamp spring and list, and the bucket I'm going to write with my handwriting. And I think it also looks quite nice if you do it all in the same font and style. But I also quite like how it looks when you have like a more structured stamp look, I guess, and some cursive handwriting with it.
Yes, I love to contrast my lettering. Like I use cursive and then either tall fonts, like kind of like this, or bold fonts. And
Yeah.
having with the typeface is really cool. That's a tip actually just for bullet journaling in general. I find playing around with the font that you use or the handwriting makes your bullet journal a little more funky.
Exactly, and also personal, because especially if you kind of infuse your own handwriting in there as well, it's not going to look like anyone else's journal. So
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask
yes,
earlier with your spreads, what are the spreads that you use every single month? Like when you sit down to set up for the month, do you use a certain spreads consistently?
yes, I have a few that I always include, like obviously the cover spread, but that's not really a functional spread. That's more kind of fun for me to just have like a really nice illustration to start off the month. And then I always use kind of like a calendar spread, I guess, to write in events or even for little memories from each day. And the weekly spreads basically are my most used kind of spread, because this is what I use to organize my tasks and my events week to week.
And in your weekly spreads, do you write out things from work as well? Do you ever blur anything out? I'm always very interested in this because I find in this bullet journal, I decided to just write anything and I'm not blurring anything out. But in the past, I've sometimes, if I'm taking a photo or something like that, I would blur something out.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like, I think this is something that's like quite important, and a lot of people don't realize that even if you don't have like a ton of followers, it's not the wisest idea to just post anything you write on the internet, because you never know who's going to read it and what they're going to make out of it. For example, like if you're going to an event and then you post it beforehand or something, and then some people will then know exactly where you are at a given time. I don't mind doing that when it's already passed. So usually when I post like an already filled in spread, the days are already gone. So something on there like meet at this park or something like this, then it doesn't matter anymore because it has happened.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. But
Yeah.
then if it's like some quite personal things, I also like blur them out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Use acronyms and things
Yeah,
like
so
that for people's
basically
names at least.
I can pen a little bit so that people can see how far we've come. Obviously, you can add a lot more details to a spread like this. I would maybe also add like a very light, maybe grid or border or something like this, or a little bit more detail to the leaves, but it's also perfectly fine as it is now.
I think it turned out amazing. I really like the whole vibe of it. So thank you for that. And
Okay,
I'll have to
I'm glad. And I also
fill in my later.
really
Sorry,
like how yours turned out like.
Thank you. Should we flip the camera around and take a few more questions then?
Yes, sure.
Also, I think there's been a bit of a lag, so I'm sorry if I'm sorry if there has been a lag when you say something and I interrupt or you
Yeah,
can't hear what I'm saying.
I'm not sure if it's my internet because sometimes it's a bit moody, but I think we did okay.
I think so, and these are so gorgeous. It goes pretty well with this theme. My question, just like to wrap up with the spread, but the one thing I'm wondering, how do you close the book with the paper in between?
Basically, what I would do is to kind of, where the binding is, I just kind of take my nail and kind of go. I don't know if that makes sense. Kind of make it bend there. So then when you close it, it closes at that spot and.
Oh, that's better. I'll have to play around with it a little bit to make sure that it'll close.
I mean, you can also like glue it in if it's like too floppy or something and it bothers you, then you can just glue the. There's no issue.
That's a good idea, actually, and I can cut along. One thing that I do if I have a paper that's glued in that extends across the 2 pages is I'll actually cut it down here and then glue it on the other side. So that
that's also a good idea, yeah.
A few questions here. Someone said, how do you get in the habit of bullet journaling? Do you have any tips for that? I know a lot of people ask me as well, how do you stick with bullet journaling? So
I guess it's just, I mean, you can just look at it as a type of organization system, more or less. Like if you're using a pre-made planner, that's also totally fine. Bullet journaling is just another type of method of. So if you today life and it kind of motivates you to be more productive or get your tasks done, that's kind of like my motivation to stick with it, because if I don't do it then I start forgetting things or I get stressed, or I just need like a visual representation of my tasks. A lot of people do it on their phone, like digitally, that's also fine, or with Notion, I guess. But I'm a more of an analog person, so I use my bullet journal for that. And I mean, you can try it out, and maybe, I don't know if that's bad advice, but if you find it out for a few months and somehow you can't make a habit of it, maybe bullet journaling just isn't the right system. It's also okay. Like there are different types of systems that you can use to organize your life, and if something isn't working for you, then you don't have to keep trying or making yourself to do it if you're not enjoying it, or I guess.
exactly. And there are tons of planners as well to try out. So, and it also doesn't need to look super decorated. Throughout university, I kept mine fairly simple. If I do decorate, it's more so just to take a break and to be creative a little bit. So, and I'll do
Yeah,
one more.
exactly. Like,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like for bullet journaling, it's basically is a pen and a notebook. You don't need paints or brush pens or markers. Like a lot of people do that because they just enjoy being creative and then they combine those two things together, but you don't need to be creative or to like draw or paint or whatever to have a bullet journal. You just
I agree, absolutely. Another question is, oh, how about this one? That's just kind of tying into what you just said. How should I get started? So you need a pen, a bullet journal. Are there any spreads or resources you would recommend for people getting started?
I think a really great resource is actually the social media channels, and I think there's the website or blog or something of the official bullet journal, because they have a lot of posts for beginners and just basics that explain the system. And I think what's most important is you can also like look on Instagram and see what other people are doing, and then okay, maybe you see a spread and see, okay, this looks interesting, I want to try it out, and you can try it out. But what can happen very quickly is that you get overwhelmed and you see all of those creative spreads and people doing thousands of spreads every month, and you just feel overwhelmed and don't know what to try and like what to pick. So I would just kind of maybe stick with the basics that the official accounts from the bullet journal kind of post and share about, and then kind of really think what you need in your day-to-day life as a person. Like, do you need a calendar spread to write events? Do you even have events to keep track of? Because if you don't want to keep track of any events, you don't need a tracker for events. Or do you want to implement some new habits in your day-to-day? Then maybe you need to have some spreads with that, and just kind of really think about what you want from your bullet journal, like what you need in your how it can help you to kind of be more organized or like achieve your goals or whatever. So I think that's where I would start and where I also started. So
Yes, and that's where I started too. I mean, thinking about the functionality first and what you need based on what you usually spend your time doing. You know, if you're a university student, it'll probably look different from if you're full-time working. So, and
exactly.
wrap up, Mihaela, thank you so much for joining the live stream and for helping me create this beautiful spread. Where can people find you online, and where would you go to check out more of your work?
I didn't catch the last part, but I think I know what you were asking. So basically, I have this account here on Instagram at Bloom and Dot. This is where I'm most active, you could say, and where people can follow me if they enjoy bullet journaling and art and botanical illustrations and things like that. I also have a TikTok account, but as I said, I'm not very active on there. But again, if you enjoy TikTok and want to follow me, you can do it there as well. And recently I started my YouTube channel, which has been quite quite an interesting experiment, I guess, because it's quite a different thing, doing like maybe 15 to 30-second reels on Instagram to like doing like 20-minute videos on YouTube with music and cutting and everything like that. But I really enjoy it, and I think YouTube also with this kind of more long-term video format has like a different thing to offer. So if you enjoy what you see on my Instagram and want to know in depth how I make the things, you can check out my YouTube channel and see my videos there, how I plan things and how I paint things. So yeah, basically, I think
Awesome.
I covered everything.
We're going to share all of your links and everything on our stories. So if you want to check out more from Mihaela, and I really recommend you do, then check out our stories. It'll all be linked there. And again, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined and shared what's on your spring bucket list. Make sure if you recreate the spread to tag us as well so that we can reshare it on our stories. So tag both the Washi Tape Shop and Mihaela at Blumen Dot. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye,
Bye.
Mihaela.